morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Clap your hands, clap, clap, clap. Stomp your feet, stomp, stomp, stomp. Spin around, spin, spin, spin. Alright. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Whoa, Tide! Woo!
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Wash your hands, wash, wash, wash. Shake your hands, shake, shake, shake. Brush your teeth, brush, brush, brush. Alright. Good morning.
Whoa, Tide on that, woo! Whoa, Tide on it. Whoa, Tide. Whoa, Tide on that, woo! 17 titles. 17 titles. Bad boy, 17 titles on this evening. Whoa, Tide on it. Whoa, Tide on it, woo! Good morning, Internet. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou. Live for you on Liu Tube today. Man, Rivalry Week. One of the best weekends of the year. Thanksgiving. The holidays starting. Family, friends in from out of town, or maybe you're out of town, or, you know, all the great food that we get. 5-6 days of football in a row. Rivalry games. Division titles on the line, playoff spots on the line, bowl bids on the line for some teams. Nebraska, you know, they fell a little short, losing to Iowa. So just, I mean, literally almost every single game that comes on is worth watching for some reason or another over this weekend, plus everything else that you have this weekend involving Thanksgiving and the start of the holidays and all that. It's just, It really is one of the best weekends of the year. Now, it wore me out. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm sort of glad it's come and gone now. I felt like I was running on empty for like 5 days in a row. I just had way too many irons in the fire, as it were. But done now, and you know, we're on to conference championship week, and these games are always big for obvious reasons, and this year is no different. A couple of questions that I'm sort of wondering about as we head into this last week of football. No team that has lost their conference championship game has ever gotten into the playoffs. Are there 3 teams this year that could lose and get in? Obviously, I think everyone knows if Oklahoma loses, they're out. If Baylor loses, they're out. If Georgia loses, they're out. If Utah loses, they're out. But almost everyone also agrees that if LSU loses, they're still in. Is there any way y'all think they would keep LSU out with a loss? What about Ohio State? What about Clemson? Clemson, to me, is the one that I think would be the most shaky if they were to lose. They're also the one I think that's least likely to lose, just based on the opponent. I don't think they're going to lose. If LSU loses, I would assume they probably get in. And it would be hard to argue, I think, that they wouldn't deserve it. I've always been on record saying that I don't think a team that loses the conference championship game could get into the playoffs. And technically, I guess I still feel that way. But LSU would still have a pretty good case. They would be sitting there at 12-1, a division title, but not a conference title. But 12-1 with wins over, Auburn, Florida, Bama. Those would be 3 top 15 teams. It would be hard to keep them out. Ohio State, if they were to lose, same boat. They would be sitting there at 12-1 with a division title but no conference title, but they'd have wins over Michigan, Penn State, Cincinnati. Who am I leaving out? Anyway, so same sort of boat. They'd have wins over several top 15, top 20 teams. I think they would probably still get in. Clemson, I think, is the one that would kind of be up in the air. If Clemson were to lose in the ACC championship game, it would be to a pretty average Virginia team, right? And they really wouldn't have the quality wins that an LSU or an Ohio State has to sort of offset that last-minute loss. So I think of those three undefeated teams, I think Clemson would be the team that would be in the most danger of getting left out if they were to lose this weekend, although I don't expect them to lose, and I don't think very many people do. Shout out to everybody joining us here on the live show this morning. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Jarvis, Gator Hater, Dane, McAllister, Bartholomew, EIO, E-I-E-I-O. E-I-E-I-O. Nick Saban said that's not fair. We'll talk plenty about that. Justin Harris, Justin Hardy, the Glitter Gator, Dog Life Ain't Easy, Ray 7337, Jethro Smith, Jay Bolton, Zane Huckabee, Daniel Aldrich, Danny Boy, Hoghead, Bears, Cubs, Canes, Jordan Bowman, Prince 6'1". Good morning, sir. Ryan Videos, Long Johnson, Second Coming 10. Appreciate all you guys tuning in this morning. What was the game of the weekend? Was it the Iron Bowl? It was the Iron Bowl, wasn't it? What a great game that was. There was other great games this weekend, but not very many with the significance of the Iron Bowl. I thought the Virginia Tech game was a great game. Went down to the wire there. There was a couple of others, but I guess it would be hard to argue anything other than the Iron Bowl for the game of the week this week. Just a crazy game, 48-45. Not very many people saw that coming, I don't think, at all. Auburn's offense has not exactly been lighting the world on fire this year. Alabama has issues of its own, with Mac Jones, but I don't think anybody saw that coming. But a great game. And I don't know, even if you're an Alabama fan, and I know I trolled about this on the You're Seeing Is Over video yesterday, but even if you're an Alabama fan, and I don't know, maybe you're still upset about the loss, so it'll be hard for you to do this today. Maybe you need another week to mourn or whatever it is y'all do when you lose. I don't understand how anybody can listen to what Nick Saban said after the game and not laugh, even if you're an Alabama fan. Pretending or blaming the refs for what happened at the end of that game is absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. Now, I think it's ridiculous to complain about the end of the first half, but that makes more sense than trying to blame the refs for the end of the game. There was nothing illegal that happened at the end of the game. Alabama didn't get screwed out of being able to substitute at the end of the game. It's just ridiculous. Auburn substituted. Bama substituted. Bama just made the wrong substitutions. They got tricked. That's all. It wasn't an illegal play. And for Saban to come out in the post-game press conference and actually use the words "not fair." Hey. It was honestly sad. He got out-coached at the end of that game. He got tricked. Gus Malzahn tricked him. That's just what happened. Now, I get it that he doesn't want to come out and admit that, and that's fine. Then just let it go. Just say, too many men on the field, whatever it is. But to try to blame the refs like you should have been allowed to make extra substitutions because you were tricked, that's insane. It's insane. Auburn substituted by running their punter onto the field. Not their entire punting team, just their punter. Bama fell for it. They thought Auburn was going to punt. So, by rule, because Auburn was substituting by running a player onto the field, in this case the punter, Alabama gets a chance to substitute. By rule, they were allowed that chance. They ran their punt return team onto the field. Okay? Well, then Auburn's punter lines up at wide receiver, and Auburn lines up in a regular offense, and Nick Saban is going, uh-oh. So instead of just changing his punt return team to a safe defense, which is what you see a lot of times in that situation, the team will just play a safe defense there. Instead of doing that, he tries to mass substitute again. He tries to run his punt team off the field and his regular defense onto the field, and he almost got it, except his punt returner stayed on the field. And that gave Bama 12 men on the field, which, of course, was a penalty, which, of course, gave Auburn a first down. That's not against the rules. The referee shouldn't have stood over the ball and stopped the play and allowed Bama to make that substitution. No. Auburn made a substitution. Bama made a substitution. Bama just got tricked and made the wrong one. And for Nick Saban to show up in the post-game press conference and cry about it like it's anybody's fault other than his was sad and a shame. The other thing is, the Auburn running back was clearly down with 1 second on the clock to end the first half. How can you watch that and say that the clock was at 0? Now, I know what you're going to say, well, they had no timeouts. The clock would have kept running. No, the clock stops on a first down. So, we'll never know if Auburn would have been able to run their field goal team out there and take a field goal if the clock had been stopped when it was supposed to. We can argue about that, but you can't argue that there shouldn't have been a second back on the clock. Of course there should. Of course there should. And, listen, Alabama's not a great team this year. They're just not. And that's not they're a good team. They're a really good team, but they're not a great team. If they made the playoffs, they wouldn't win the national title. Okay, they're not a complete team this year. Their defense is average at best. Tua's out. Mac Jones is a turnover machine. It just is what it is. But for Saban to come out and cry and blame the refs, and it's not fair. And the fact that anybody would come out and cry about it not being fair against Auburn just makes it even funnier, because of course that's Auburn's whole thing. That's Auburn's whole existence, is nothing is fair to us. And so for Saban to come out and sort of steal that, it's kind of sad. Interesting stats here. Alabama now has lost their last 3 games against ranked teams. Sad. Lost 3 straight against ranked teams. Nick Saban is 0-7 on the road against Auburn when Auburn is ranked. Is that true? Or is it just 0-7 altogether? 0-7 against Auburn when Auburn is ranked. Man. Bama fans better hope Auburn's terrible again next year, I guess, or you lose the game again, won't you? How is it possible to have any type of 7-game losing streak to Auburn under any criteria you want to lay out? Ranked, unranked, whatever. That's sad. Georgia beats the barn like they owe us money. That doesn't matter. Ranked, unranked, home, away. How are you 0-7? That's bad. That's real bad. Celine Driver, thank you for the super chat, sir. Congrats to my Gators. We'll be ranked over the Gumps. We sent the fake Indians home, sad and beaten. And we run the state of Florida. I was on BVD's show last night, and an interesting topic came up. If Georgia loses to LSU, who goes to the Sugar Bowl? You would have an 11-2 Georgia team who won their division. You would have a 10-2 Florida team who did not win their division and got beat by Georgia. And you would have a 10-2 Alabama who did not win their division and didn't play either Florida or Georgia. I would assume Georgia would get it. If I was the Sugar Bowl, I'll tell you this. If I was the Sugar Bowl and it was up to me which of those 3 SEC teams got it, you know who I would give it to? Florida. I would give it to Florida. Not because I think they're the best team. Obviously, they lost to UGA. Alabama fans ain't going to the Sugar Bowl. We know that. Alabama fans aren't going to the Sugar Bowl. Georgia fans, if you're a Georgia fan, and Georgia makes the Sugar Bowl, and you spend your money on that, there's something wrong with you. After what Georgia did to you last year when you at the Sugar Bowl when you went, you would have to be out of your mind as a Georgia fan to willingly spend money to go watch Georgia play in the Sugar Bowl when you already know, based on what they did last year, how the football team and all that feels about the Sugar Bowl. Florida, on the other hand, their fans would be besides themselves, wouldn't they? Florida would sell that thing out in a matter of minutes. But it will probably be Georgia, I would guess. If Georgia loses, my guess would be that Georgia would get the Sugar Bowl. It would be interesting to see who a second New Year's Six bowl would take between Florida and Bama. That would be interesting to see. Real interesting. Not very many playoff scenarios left to talk about either. Thank God. Sometimes I feel like all we do from August to December is talk about playoff scenarios. And I do get tired of talking about it. It's all based on the Georgia LSU game, in my opinion, because if Georgia wins, there's no debate about who gets in my opinion. If Georgia wins, your top 4 teams right now are getting in. Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and LSU. It's just what order you put them in. So if Georgia wins, that's it. It's settled, in my opinion. Those will be the 4 teams. If Georgia loses, then, of course, you're going to have Oklahoma, Baylor, or Utah. I think everyone agrees on that. I think if Utah wins, if Georgia loses, I think Utah's in if they win no matter what happens in the Oklahoma-Baylor game. I think a one-loss Utah will finish ahead of either a one-loss Oklahoma or Baylor. So if Georgia wins, they're in. If Georgia loses and Utah wins, I think Utah gets it. If Georgia loses and Utah loses, I think the winner of Oregon-Baylor gets the 4 spot. That's what I think is happening. So I don't think anybody else has a chance. I've seen the Bama fans with the type about, well, if this team loses and this team loses and this team loses, like somehow Alabama thinks they're still going to be ranked ahead of Baylor. No, you're not. Neither you or Baylor, either one have beat any good teams, but they have less losses than you. So it is what it is. It is what it is. I don't know what else to tell you. The SEC championship game is a playoff game for Georgia. Well, every game for Georgia has been a playoff game since their loss earlier in the year. Any one loss, once you lose one game, every single game becomes a playoff game. The Iron Bowl was a playoff game for Alabama. So the Georgia-Florida game was a playoff game for Florida, and they lost. So that's just what it is. Christian S., thank you for the super chat. Lou, guess what? Ann Arbor is still a whore. That's all. Man, we'll talk about coaches because we had some lose their job yesterday, and then we had a rumor. Man, did y'all hear the Clay Helton rumors going around yesterday? I was so ready to get on Twitter with the "I told you so," but man, I guess it was a false report. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to keep your eyes open and your ears open for any news out of Southern Cal over the next couple of days. But if you know what I'm talking about, Sports Illustrated had a report out yesterday that Clay Helton had been fired at Southern Cal. Now, within about an hour, Southern Cal denied that report and Sports Illustrated retracted it. But it's just funny. I mean, Sports Illustrated is it's not like just some troll on Twitter was going around saying it. I mean, it's Sports Illustrated. So, a reputable source at least. But they took it back. But it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening there. They're 8-4 and they're ranked. So I don't know. Are they going to fire him? I don't know. To me, I don't think you fire Clay Helton after an 8-4 season unless you know that unless you know you can get Urban Meyer. That's it. If they fire Clay Helton and they end up with any coach not named Urban Meyer, then they screwed up royally. Now I don't think Clay Helton's a great coach, but the point is he went 8-4. It's a huge improvement over last year. So if you fire Clay Helton, then it better be because you've got Urban Meyer in the bag. That's all that's just what it is. But Missouri fired their coach, right? Ole Miss fired their coach. Crazy. So just a lot going on with coaches here over the last few days, which, I mean, this happens all the time. Mike Bobo gone at Colorado State. A lot of Georgia fans with the Bobo phone home. Wouldn't hurt my feelings to get Bobo back in Athens as an offensive coordinator. It would not hurt my feelings at all. And it's going to be curious to see what happens with Bobo, not just if he ends up at Georgia or not, but does he get another opportunity as a head coach somewhere? That was his first head coaching job, was Colorado State. Remember, he was offensive coordinator at Georgia for several years. Georgia's offense was setting records, averaging 40-something points a game. He got an opportunity as head coach at Colorado State, and he took it, and it didn't work out well. He never really gained any traction there as a head coach. So is this going to be the type of situation where he sort of realizes, okay, maybe I'm better suited as a coordinator? Or does – I mean, the thing is, Colorado State's already a group of 5 team. So you can't – I mean, it's not like a Power 5 team watched what he did at Colorado State, and they're going to now give him a chance. So he's not getting a group of 5 head coaching job. I mean, a Power 5 head coaching job. Is there another group of 5 school that's impressed enough with what he did at Colorado State to give him an opportunity? Probably not. Like I said, he didn't do good at all as head coach there. So can he swallow his pride and sort of take a step down and come back to Georgia as offensive coordinator? I don't know. Him and Kirby are buddies from way back in the day, obviously. That's no surprise there. I probably not the best idea in the world in general to be hiring people you're friends with, because it becomes hard to fire them if you have to. It's just like with hiring family members. Bob Stoops makes Mike Stoops defensive coordinator. He's the worst defensive coordinator in America, but Bob Stoops doesn't have the balls to fire him because they're related, that kind of thing. So there would be some inherent risks involved there with hiring Bobo. Maybe, because maybe it becomes too hard for Kirby to get rid of him if he has to. I don't know. But I would support a Bobo phone home movement with no hesitation at all. Here's people who obviously I don't understand this Bobo sucked thing. These people are, people hate. There's nothing worse than scoring 45. Georgia's offense struggles to get into the 20s, but Bobo sucks. Yeah, scoring 45 points a game with Bobo. We had no defense when we had Bobo. Okay, that it wasn't a Bobo. Bobo didn't get a head coaching job because our offense sucked when he was the coordinator. Okay, I don't understand this. I really don't. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't understand people that said Bobo that thinks Bobo was terrible. I don't understand. Anyway, what else? I don't know. What's Ole Miss going to do? Ole Miss, Arkansas, Missouri. I don't know. What are these teams going to do? Greg Schiano, I guess, took the job at Rutgers over the weekend. Or at least that's the report. Maybe we'll hear something official today or whatever. Florida State still looking. It looks like Bob Stoops is going to stay in the XFL. Man, how bad? Can we talk about this? I thought Florida State was a premier job. I said it a bunch of times. I said, look, Florida State's bad right now. Willie Taggart's driving them into the ground. but that's still one of the best 15 coaching jobs on planet Earth, right? Florida State, you just won a national title 6 years ago. It's not like the ACC is loaded with great teams. I mean, basically you only have one hurdle to jump, and that's Clemson. Recruiting in the state of Florida. How can you not lure Bob Stoops away from the XFL? Maybe Florida State's not as good of a coaching job as I thought it was. I don't know. I don't know, but you can't. But so you can't get Bob. You try to get Bob Stoops. You can't get him. Not you. So you try to get Mark Stoops from Kentucky, which I think would be for Florida State to hire Mark Stoops. I'm not saying Mark Stoops doesn't deserve maybe a better job than Kentucky. Maybe he does. I mean, he's had one great year at Kentucky. I mean, if you look at like James Franklin at Vanderbilt, I mean, he put a couple of good years together before he got the Penn State job, right? Mark Stoops really had one good year at Kentucky. Now, Florida State's going to go get him now? It seems like Florida State could reach a lot higher on the coaching tree to me. But again, maybe I'm overestimating how good of a job I thought Florida State was. I don't know. So I don't know what they're going to do. I have no idea. The most interesting thing to me right now is Southern Cal and Clay Helton, and do they get Urban Meyer? Because as far as like for the purpose, just for this channel's purposes, it would be amazing if Southern Cal would fire Clay Helton and hire Urban Meyer, because I then get to come on here every day with the there's nothing wrong with Urban Meyer thing, and which we know there's nothing wrong with him. I don't need him to get hired by Southern Cal to prove that to me. The only people who are in denial about that still are Ohio State fans, and this is the same thing we saw when he left Florida, right? When Urban Meyer first left Florida, Florida fans loved him. If you tried to say anything bad about Urban Meyer, or if you tried to tell the truth to Florida fan that there was nothing wrong with Urban Meyer when he left Florida, they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear it. Now ask a Florida fan now. See, now they all hate him now. Now they've all come around. The truth has set them free, so to speak. And the same thing will happen with Ohio State fans. Urban Meyer getting the job at Southern Cal would just speed that process along. That's all. S. Hazel, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, what do you think about Dabo's comments after the game? Any merit or just complaints? Let me read through the other two super chats because I've got a lot I want to say about that. Adam Watford, thank you for the super chat, sir. Ole Miss screwed Matt Luke over, used him as a placeholder until the bowl ban was over. I think everyone knew that when he was hired. Listen, when you get put on probation and lose your coach at the same time, you're not getting an amazing coach. You're just not. You're going to get somebody who has no other options. No one wanted the Ole Miss jobs, and Matt Luke had no other options. That's how he ended up there. So I'm not surprised at all that this is how it ended up. Tyrants 5, thank you for the super chat, sir. He says, hey, Luke, you did great work. I'm sure my Sooners are going to take care of business in the Big 12 Championship, but hey, have a great rest of your morning, Lou and Boomer. Sooner, yeah, good luck to your Sooners against Baylor. Should be a good game. It was a good game last time. We'll see. Weird game last time, if you guys remember. Baylor got up huge. Was it 28-0 and then 31-3? And Oklahoma came back and won, I think, 34-31. So we'll see what happens this go around Baylor, Oklahoma round 2. Back to the Dabo comments. I'm going to give Dabo a little bit of a pass on what he said, because I think I know why he said it. And if you pay attention to Dabo Swinney, he says things similar to this often. Clemson was 15-0 last year. They are 12-0 now. He's trying to motivate his team. That's it. That's all he's doing. That's it. He coaches look for any way to gain an edge, any way to motivate their team. It's hard to win back-to-back titles for a variety of reasons. Complacency is one of those reasons, though. Some players, when you win a national title, it's hard to try as hard the next year as you did the year before. And when I say try as hard, I don't just mean on Saturdays in the fall. I mean, when you win a national title in January, it's hard during spring practice to get up the hour early to go do extra workouts, to stay the hour late after to do the extra workouts, to do the extra film study all summer long, to do the voluntary workouts in the summer. It's harder to do all those things all year long when you're sitting on a national title trophy from the year before when you were 15-0. That's one of the reasons it's hard to go back to back. The other reason is motivation. When you've played in the playoffs as many times as Clemson and Alabama has, and you see this has started to trickle down even to Alabama fans, when you've been to the playoffs as many times as those two teams have over the last few years, regular season games lose some of their luster. They just do. I don't think that's an insult to Alabama fans or Clemson fans or whatever. But in other words, it's hard for the average Clemson fan to get excited about playing North Carolina in Week 4 or whatever. When you're used to playing big playoff games against Alabama and Notre Dame and all these teams, And it just makes it hard to win. So coaches look for any way they can to try to motivate their team and their players. And I think a lot of the BS that Dabo says, and that's what this was, is just he's not even saying it for me and you to hear or the media to hear. He's saying it for his own team to hear. That's all. He's just trying to get his own team motivated. That's all it is. So I don't. What he said is completely ridiculous, and I don't even think he believes it. Like I said, I think there are other reasons why he. I think there are other reasons why he said that. So that's kind of how I feel. That's kind of how I feel about that, because I guess for those of you that don't know, and I don't have the exact quote. Maybe I'll pull it up after we do Liu Tube history here in just a second. But basically, what he said was. Georgia lost to South Carolina. Clemson beat South Carolina, but they don't get any credit for it. And, Georgia loses to South Carolina, and the committee looks for ways to keep them in the playoff talk. But Clemson beats South Carolina, and everybody looks for a way to get them out or something. He doesn't believe that. Like I said, I think it's just motivation because he knows, like anyone else knows, The reason they lost to South Carolina would have hurt Clemson so bad as opposed to Georgia is because just like Alabama, Clemson doesn't have any wins to offset the loss. That would be why. It wouldn't be because of Clemson fatigue or people just hating on Clemson for no reason. I mean, that's just ridiculous. He's trying to make it sound like Clemson is at a level where everyone hates them, sort of like how everyone hates Bama or whatever. And first of all, let me slow that talk down. Clemson's not on that level. Clemson's a great program, probably the best in America right now. Not team, forget team, the best program. They're not Alabama. Clemson hasn't been dominating college football for 10 years. They've won 2 national titles in 3 years, and that's amazing. That is amazing. But they haven't done what Bama did yet. They don't have the level of hate directed towards them that Bama has directed towards them over the last few years. But he's trying to act like they do. Oh, everybody just hates us and they're just looking for a reason to keep us out. No, if you would have lost to South Carolina, the reason you would have had potential of getting bumped out of the top 4 is because you have no wins to offset it. That's all. That's it. Georgia fell all the way down to 9 when they lost to South Carolina? I took them out of my top 10. But since then, they have beat multiple top 12 teams, top 10 teams. Florida, Auburn. They beat Notre Dame before that. Who is what are they going to be ranked now? 13th, 14th? Clemson doesn't have that to offset a potential loss to South Carolina. So that's where all the talk came from the media and from the outside about, if Clemson loses to South Carolina, they could be out. It has nothing to do with people hating on Clemson. It just doesn't. You haven't earned the level of hate. You're trying to act like, or Dabo is trying to act like Clemson is receiving the level of hate that Alabama receives. Man, first of all, they're not. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I don't even think Dabo believes that. I really don't. I don't think Dabo Swinney believes that. So, but hopefully Georgia beats LSU. because if that happens, the first round of the playoffs is going to be Georgia versus Clemson, and I would love that. Not that I think Georgia. When I say I love it, it's not because I think Georgia would go out and steamroll them. That's not why. Just a lot of Clemson fans around, and we have played Clemson since I've been on YouTube, but it was my first year. It was back in 2014, wasn't it? Yeah. But no one was watching then. It would be fun to play Clemson now, just to go back and forth with the fans for a week is what I meant by that. So we'll see. If Georgia beats LSU, that'll be your first round game, Georgia versus Clemson in the desert. And it'll be LSU, Ohio State in Atlanta. Those will be your two first round games if Georgia wins this coming up weekend. Okay, let's do Liu Tube history. And then what I want to do, I feel like we've talked a lot about what's already happened. We're going to talk about what's going to happen this coming weekend. We'll do Liu Tube history, and then when we come back from that, I'm going to pull up the schedule of conference championship games coming up this weekend. We'll go through them, and we're going to look at the spreads too, see how close some of these games are, or are people expecting blowouts. So this today's your moment in Liu Tube history is from, I think, December 2014, I think. My first year on Liu Tube, so keep that in mind when you watch it. It's a long time ago. I barely know what I'm doing now. I definitely did not know what I was doing 5 years ago. But so this would have been my first YouTube bowl video. Georgia was playing, I think, Louisville in the Belk Bowl in December of 2014, if I remember right. We'll find out when I play the video. But anyway, December 2014, Uncle Lou breaking down, I think, Georgia versus Louisville in the Belk Bowl. And when we come back, we'll look at the conference championship games coming up this week. Enjoy. Hi. Uncle Lou here. Good morning. That's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, live on Liu Tube for you people. Hope everyone's having a good morning. I'm pretty sure that you are. But yep, Georgia versus Louisville today. Is it Louisville or is it Louisville or Louisville or Louisville or... Anyway, Georgia versus the Cardinals today. Louisville Cardinals. Yep, in the Belk Bowl, which is exciting. I guess, I don't know. But yeah, I haven't talked much about this game, other than on the radio show. I haven't really made a video about it, but obviously Georgia's going to win this game. Duh. You don't have to be a scholar or a gentleman to figure that out. Georgia should win this game without a problem. Yeah, Louisville's defense is ranked pretty high. Of course, not too hard to be ranked too high when you're playing things like Pitt and Syracuse and Wake Forest and the two North Carolina teams and Duke and these garbage teams that are in the ACC, just pathetic and a joke. But yep, so yeah, I guess their running back is out too. By running back, I mean the running back what they stole from Auburn. That Dyer or whatever his name is, he's out. So not looking too good for Louisville. And I look for Georgia to win this game without a problem. We'll see. Isaiah McKenzie out for Georgia, which really just hurts us on special teams. Yep. Nick Chubb, good to go. Sony Michel, good to go. Keith Marshall, I don't want to ruin the surprise here. But I've heard rumors. Yep, so keep your eye on Keith Marshall today. So we'll see what he does. But supposedly he's back better than ever. We'll see. I don't know. Of course, it's Noodle Arm Mason's last game as a dog. So maybe he can finally break the 200-yard barrier. not likely, but we'll see. But yeah, Georgia should win this game. Louisville's a pretty good team. Not going to knock them. I don't hate Louisville. Actually, I had somebody ask me on the radio show why I hate Todd Grantham. I don't hate Todd Grantham. I don't know where anybody got that from. I didn't like him as Georgia's defensive coordinator. I don't think that means that I hated him. Just for whatever reason, he wasn't able to get the job done at UGA. I'm not saying it was all his fault. I'm just saying it was time for a change, which, of course, we did with bringing in Jeremy Pruitt this year. I don't place all the blame for Georgia's defensive struggles over the last 3 years on Todd Grantham, but he obviously wasn't, it just wasn't working out with him there. So doesn't mean I hate him. I did want to see him go last year. I did think he needed to go. So, but as far as me hating Todd Grantham, I don't. Now Bobby Petrino, different story. I do hate Bobby Petrino, just like, I'm sure 99% of the people watching this video feel the same way. He's just a terrible human being. He's losing at life. Just a very shady character, no morals. Just a filthy human being. I'm not a big NFL fan, but the way he left the Falcons in the middle of the night, in the middle of the season, was just terrible. Then, of course, we all know what happened to him at Arkansas. Don't need to go into that. Not throwing stones there. So he's just a terrible human being and an all-around bad guy. So, yeah, I do hate him. He's pretty much worthless in my opinion. But Georgia going to win this game without a problem. Of course, the SEC with the overrated, terrible, crappy, sorry SEC, undefeated in bowl games so far. Texas A&M with a victory. Arkansas with a victory. Who else? South Carolina with a victory too. So 3-0. The LSU Notre Dame game is on now. It's pretty good game. Tied up, I think it is here about halftime or so. But LSU should win this game, no problem. Of course, Georgia will win tonight. That will put the SEC 5-0 in bowl games, which is a miracle because the SEC is probably the worst conference in America. They're so overrated. It's just ESPN owns the SEC network. That's the only reason the SEC even has any teams ranked at all. They're terrible. They're a complete joke. It's a miracle that they even had teams make bowl games, much less win them. They're just overrated. They're not any good. They've just been, they were just lucky the last 8 out of 9 years of the BCS to win the title. It was just pure luck. Had nothing to do with recruiting or coaching or talent on the teams or nothing nothing like that. SEC completely overrated. Worst conference in America. Can't believe they're 3-0 in bowl games. After today, going to be 5-0. It's got me scratching my head here.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. 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 Clap your hands,
Clap, clap, clap.
Stomp your feet,
Stomp, stomp, stomp.
Spin around,
Spin, spin, spin. Hooray!
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning.
wash, wash, wash.
Shake your hands,
Shake, shake, shake.
Brush your teeth,
Brush, brush, brush. Hooray! Good morning. What an amazing song that is. I love reading, every time I play that song, I love reading the comments about how much everybody loves that song. I should do a morning show where I just play that song like over and over again. It probably would end up being one of my most popular videos. Shane Bentley, thank you for the super chat. Surrey says, my wife and I went to the Belk Bowl in 14. Accidentally got tickets on the Louisville side, but it worked out because we were close enough to heckle Todd Grantham. Cue the choke sign. Yeah, I've never been to a bowl game. Well, maybe I'll get to one of these days. Now, of course, Georgia did end up winning that game, and it wasn't even close. I think it was 37-14 or something like that. Nick Chubb went absolutely ham in that game. He had almost 300 yards rushing. I think there was a point in that video where I said maybe Hudson Mason will get his first 200-yard passing game. Well, he didn't. He came up short. He was about 150 or so. But we completely dominated that game. It wasn't even close. We just ran them out of the building, which is no surprise to Uncle Lou at all. At all, no surprise. What else though? Also, yeah. Let's talk about these games coming up this weekend. I think LSU Georgia is the most interesting game. I think some of the other games I think are going to be blowouts. I think the Pac-12 game has the potential to be interesting, and y'all remember that game comes on Friday night, so don't forget that. And normally the Pac-12 game, wasn't it last year? The Pac-12 championship game was like 6-3, 10-6, something like that. It was just painful. It wasn't worth watching because there was no playoff hopes involved. It was a terrible game. It was just pitiful and sad. That won't be the case this year. I think it'll be a good game this year, and, of course, there are playoff implications. Utah still has a chance to get into the playoffs, and because that game's on Friday, they obviously won't know yet whether Georgia has won or lost against LSU. Because, of course, if Georgia wins, that takes away all the – I mean, if Georgia wins, you know who the four teams are. It just takes away all the guesswork there. So, but this game, the Pac-12 game, will be played before that, so Utah has all the reason in the world to go out and win that game. We'll see if they can do it, or can Oregon play spoiler? Can Oregon be the reason that the Pac-12 doesn't get a team into the playoffs this year by beating Utah? We'll find out. Sexy Rexy Florida man, good morning. Where do you think Franks will go? I have no idea. Of course, Felipe Franks entering the transfer portal. News broke yesterday. Nobody, I don't think, is surprised by that news. As far as where he'll go, I really don't know. I think we're going to have to wait a while, obviously. You know, he's going to want to go somewhere where he can play right away because he's running out of eligibility, right? So I think we're going to have to wait a couple of weeks. We're going to have to see which schools have junior quarterbacks that declare for the draft, maybe, right, where there's an immediate opening, that type of thing. If you look around the SEC, and there's nothing to suggest or say he would even go to the SEC, but, you know, Missouri, right, they're losing Kelly Bryant. You know, maybe they would have some interest. Auburn is a no-go. Bo Nix is a freshman, right? South Carolina played multiple freshman quarterbacks this year, so I would assume one of those quarterbacks is going to be the guy there next year, so probably not there. You know, Alabama's got Mac Jones and Tua Jr. Texas A&M is losing Kellen Mond. Could that be a possibility? But anyway, that's sort of what he'll be looking for, right? He's not going to go somewhere where there's a sophomore or a junior who's been starting for a year or two and that person's coming back next year. That's not why a senior transfer is to play, right? So we'll see. But in other words, as far as where is he going to go, I think we're going to have to wait a while to figure that out. He's going to want to know who's leaving, what teams, and all those kinds of things. So I think it's way too early to try to speculate where he might go, right? But we'll see. All right. Let's pull this up. God, do y'all really want to look at this? Projecting all 41. I hate bowl projections. They're just pointless. They change every week. Maybe we'll look at those in a second, but let's look at the let's just look at the games. All right. Well, no, not week 14, week 15. Thank you. Yep. Yep. All right, here's the games. Let's see what we got. Friday, like I mentioned, Utah versus Oregon. This game is played in Santa Clara, California. I guess that's San Francisco 49er Stadium, right? 8 o'clock on ABC Friday night. So, in theory, everyone will be watching. I don't actually think everyone will be watching. There's just a lot of people who... There's even some serious college football fans who just completely ignore the Pac-12. I mean, that's just the reality. This will probably be the most watched Pac-12 game of the year because it's a conference championship game, because it's on a Friday, because there's nothing else on opposite that. You know, you don't have a choice of another game in this one. So I do think a lot of people will end up watching this game, Utah versus Oregon. I'm going to pull the spreads up for these games in a minute, but what do y'all think the spread is on this game? And I'm going to pull them up in a second. I'm going to assume Utah is a small favorite in this game. Maybe 4 points. That's my guess. Baylor versus Oklahoma, round 2 here. Second year in a row. Well, every year in the Big 12 you have a rematch. But Baylor versus Oklahoma here. Oklahoma, of course, beat Baylor in the regular season. Can Baylor get revenge this time around? That's still Baylor's only loss. I have a feeling Oklahoma wins. The spread on this game, I'm going to guess this spread is closer to about 10. Maybe even a little higher in favor of Oklahoma. That's my guess. So Oklahoma, I'm going to say, is about a 10-point favorite. Utah, I'm going to say, is about a 3 or 4 point favorite. Louisiana at App State, nobody cares. App State will win. Miami of Ohio at Central Michigan, no one cares. UAB at Florida Atlantic, no one cares. Cincinnati at Memphis. Deja vu all over again. We just saw this game. Hard to pick against Memphis. They just won. I'm gonna go with Memphis again. I'm gonna say they're about a 10-point favorite. Georgia at LSU. I already know on this one, LSU, depending on where you look, is a 6 or a 7-point favorite right now in that one. Hawaii at Boise State. Boise State will steamroll them. Virginia versus Clemson. What's the spread here? I'm going to say Clemson is about a 24-point favorite. I'm going to say Clemson is about a 24-point favorite. Ohio State versus Wisconsin. We've seen this game once this year, too. Ohio State blew them out. Didn't they? Wasn't it like 38-7 or something? I don't remember. I think so. I'm going to say Ohio was Uncle Lou on some of these spreads. Let me pull this up. Here we go. Utah and Oregon. Utah is a 6.5-point favorite. That's higher than I thought. I thought it would be about 3 or 4. That's interesting. That's interesting. Utah's got a good defense. No doubt about it. They like to run the ball. I might lean Oregon here in the 6.5. I not that I don't think Utah can win, but I don't know. 6.5 might be a little bit too high. What do y'all think? Baylor and Oklahoma. I said Oklahoma by 10. They're favored by 9. So I was pretty close there. Right now I would lean Oklahoma minus 9. And I think if you can get Oklahoma, I wouldn't be surprised if this game ends up going over 10 before it starts. So if you like Oklahoma in this game at minus 9, I would play it early in the week, because I wouldn't be surprised if this line changes some later in the week. Maybe if it goes to Oklahoma, it could go as high as 11, 10.5 or 11. I like Oklahoma anything under 10. I might put an early bet in on this one myself. I like Oklahoma minus 9 there. Dang, I got this one dead on. Memphis 10 points. And, of course, they just played in Memphis 1, and they were clearly the better team. Boise State, 15 over Hawaii. This one I already knew, 7 points. LSU a 7-point favorite over Georgia. Don't listen to anything I say about this game, but I'm obviously taking Georgia plus 7. I'll take them plus 225. I think Georgia's going to beat LSU. Man, this is higher than I thought. What did I say? Clemson minus 20. Did I say 24? Yeah, 28.5. I'll probably take Virginia plus 28.5. I do think Clemson wins easily, but over 4 touchdowns, I don't know. Bryce Perkins can be if Bryce Perkins has a good game, I think Virginia can maybe keep this interesting for a half or so. But Clemson's defense is lights out, though. They've got the number 1 defense in America in terms of total defense. We can argue about who actually has the best defense, but if you just go by rankings and stats and all that, Clemson has the number 1 defense in America. In the last 2 years, the team with the number 1 defense has won the national title. Clemson had the number 1 defense in 2018, and they won the national title. Alabama had the number 1 defense in 2017, and they won the national title. This year, Clemson has the number 1 defense. But I think 28.5 might be a little bit too high there. Wisconsin and Ohio State. Ohio State minus 16.5. I would take Ohio State. My only concern about Ohio State is they've played a lot of good teams in a row, and is that going to start to catch up with them here? I don't know. They played what was it? Penn State, Michigan, and now Wisconsin. 3 weeks in a row. Now they handled Penn State. They beat Penn State worse than what the score showed. They really did. They had 3 turnovers in that game and still won comfortably. By 11? What was it? 28-17 or something against Penn State, and they turned the ball over 3 times, gave Penn State 3 extra possessions, still won by 10 or 11 points. So that game wasn't as close as the score indicated. And then, of course, they did what they always do to Michigan. They blew Michigan out last week. They've blown Wisconsin out once already. That was really the Chase Young coming out party. I had been talking about Chase Young all year, but Ohio State hadn't played a lot of big-time games up to that point of the year, so there were a lot of people watching that Ohio State-Wisconsin game, and Chase Young went absolutely ham in that game. He had 4 or 5 sacks, 6 or 7 tackles for loss, a fumble recovery. I mean, it was just insane. It would be hard to pick Wisconsin in this game, I think. 38-7, I think this score was the first time around. Like I said, my only concern is, 3 tough games in a row here for Ohio State. Does it catch up with them? I don't know. They look like the best team. The eye test. Ohio State wins the eye test so far this season. Period. There hasn't been a single week where their offense or defense struggled, either one. Their offense and their defense have both been amazing every single week of the season. Consistently great every single week. Clemson struggled a little bit the first 4 or 5 games of the year. They've looked amazing since then, though. LSU has a top 3 or 4 offense, but their defense is terrible. Georgia has a top 3 or 4 defense, but their offense is terrible. Oklahoma has no defense. Baylor doesn't have a great offense. Baylor's got a better defense than Oklahoma, I think. Ohio State has looked great on both sides of the ball every single week so far this season to me. So again, I don't know. We'll see. I think Georgia can beat LSU. I think it'll be a good game. I see all the comments. Georgia can't stop. Nobody can stop Joe Burrow. LSU's going to blow out Georgia. I don't know. The idea that no one can stop Joe Burrow is ridiculous. He's already been. He scored 23 against Auburn. So yes, Joe Burrow can be slowed down. We've seen it. Does that mean Georgia will definitely do it? No. Doesn't mean they definitely will. But the idea that you can't stop Joe Burrow is ridiculous. This will be the best defense Joe Burrow has ever played against. Period. I don't care how much you hate me or Georgia. Georgia's defense is better than Auburn's. It's better than Alabama's. It's better than Florida's. Those are the 3 best defenses that Joe Burrow has played. And Georgia's defense is unbelievable. So the idea that you can't slow down Joe Burrow is ridiculous. Just because Alabama couldn't, and Texas couldn't, and Florida couldn't, and Auburn did, but didn't score enough points to win, doesn't mean nobody can. Of course they can. Of course they can. And LSU's defense, LSU does not have a championship defense. They don't. Georgia doesn't have a championship offense. So it's sort of the classic, listen. How many of y'all have heard this expression? Offense wins championships. Raise your hand if you've heard that expression. Offense wins championship. Oh, no, that's right. That's right. Defense wins championships. I mean, I didn't make that expression up, but there's a reason that expression exists. So we'll see. I think Georgia's a 7-point underdog to LSU. Georgia would be twice that to Ohio State or Clemson. Georgia would be a 10 to 14 point underdog against Clemson and probably a 14 to 17 point underdog against Ohio State. Those are complete teams, offense and defense. LSU is not. LSU's defense is not very good. Georgia's offense is not very good, okay? Auburn's offense is not very good. Auburn lost in Baton Rouge 23-20. It can be done. We'll see. Now, Fromm's had 4 games in a row where he's completed less than 50% of his passes. If he completes less than 50%, Georgia will lose. Period. He's going to have to have – Fromm's going to have his best game of the year. Better even than Florida. Because if you go back and watch the Florida game, which a lot of people will try to tell you was Fromm's best game this year. Go back and watch that game. He missed multiple wide open receivers for touchdowns where we ended up kicking field goals on that drive. That won't beat that won't beat LSU. That won't beat LSU. We get down we get down to the 30-yard line against LSU, 25, 30, 35-yard line, and it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. We better be going for it. Field goals are not going to beat LSU. Fromm's going to have his best game. He's going to have to complete some passes. We're going to have to figure out a way to run the ball. And the defense is going to just have to do what the defense has been doing, all year. If the offense can't get it going against LSU, then first of all, that's sad because literally everyone has gotten it going against LSU on offense. If Georgia's offense can't get it going against LSU, then we won't win. I mean, these are obvious things I'm telling you. You look at the Auburn game, Georgia had 10 3-and-outs against Auburn. Now, keep in mind, Auburn's offense is terrible. We had 10 3-and-outs. If you have 10 3-and-outs against LSU, we'll get blown out. Our defense is great. If they're on the field for 40 minutes of this game, 35 minutes of this game, they'll give out. They'll give out. The offense needs to sustain drives. It's just as important that the offense sustain drives as it is that the offense scores touchdowns instead of field goals. The offense needs first downs. 2, 3, 4, 5 first downs in a drive. Even if you get 2 or 3 first downs and bog down at the 50 and you can punt them down inside the 10-yard line or something, that's almost even a win for Georgia offensively. But the 3-and-out thing will kill Georgia in that game. If they better, the coaching staff better be coming up with something. I mean, that's all I can say. That's all I can say. I think LSU as a 7-point favorite is about right because Georgia's offense has looked that bad most of the year. It really has. If Georgia's offense was even a little bit better, I think a lot of people would be giving Georgia more of a chance here because of LSU's defense. But Georgia's offense and I think I mentioned this on BVD's show last night too. Even the Georgia Tech game where we scored 52, whatever it was. Nothing comes easily to Georgia's offense. Nothing. Everything looks like a struggle. when you watch Georgia on offense. Now, when we play a team that has a really bad defense, we can put up some points and some yards like we did against Tech. But even in those games when you watch Georgia's offense, it's just everything looks like a struggle. So we'll see. We'll see what they can come up with this week. I'm a Georgia fan. I don't try to hide that fact. So I think Georgia has a chance to win, but I always think Georgia has a chance to win. The only thing I don't have a problem. People say LSU is going to win. I don't have a problem with that. Most people think LSU is going to win. I do have a problem with people saying LSU is going to win 45-10 and stuff like that. I just don't see that happening. Could it happen? I guess anything could happen, but I don't understand. I guess what I don't understand is how everybody talks about how bad Georgia's offense is, so I'm assuming you've watched some Georgia games to know that. But then you've got to see how good the defense is too. We gave Georgia Tech 5 extra possessions in that game. They scored 7 points total. And I know it's Georgia Tech, but nobody has scored more than 2 touchdowns on Georgia all year. Now, obviously, LSU could. This is going to be the best offense we've played. So, obviously, LSU could score more than 2 touchdowns. But the defense has been lights out week in and week out. And I expect that to continue. And if we lose this game, it won't be the defense's fault. It will be because the offense couldn't sustain drives and they hung the defense out to dry. That's why we lost South Carolina. It wasn't the defense's fault we lost South Carolina. The defense gave up 1 touchdown to South Carolina. So you give up 1 touchdown on defense and lose, it's not your defense's fault. It's the offense's fault. So if we lose, it'll be the offense's fault. No doubt about it. Anyway, I'm going to end it. It's after 9. I got to do my top 10 today. Well, let me catch up on these super chats first. Jake1248, thank you for the super chat, sir. I'm from Georgia and a UGA fan, but I'm stationed out here in Cali. Tickets were cheap, so said, what the heck, I'm going to the Pac-12 championship. Hey, there's nothing. I would do the same thing. As a college football fan, if you live somewhere other than where your team plays, I would do that too, especially big games like that. I would definitely do that. I was talking to Liu Jr. Yesterday. And I think we're going to try to go to 1 road game a year now. We went to the game at Georgia Tech, of course, this past weekend. It was I went to a road game, but I was in middle school, so that tells you how long ago it was. So this was the first time I'd been to a road game in a long time, and I enjoyed it. And so I think we're going to try to go to 1 road game a year from now on. I've been going to 1 game a year, and it's been a home game since I started this YouTube thing because I work most Saturdays here on YouTube. So it's hard for me to go to a lot of games, but I try to make time to go to 1 game a year, and it usually ends up being a home game, and that was supposed to be the case this year, the Texas A&M game, but because of the rain, I pushed it off to the Georgia Tech game and went to that one instead. I think we're going to try to go to 1 road game a year, though, from now on. Maybe 1 road game and 1 home game. We'll see. And a lot of good options there for next year. Got the game at Alabama next year. Or if we're looking to do something close, we play at South Carolina, which is only about an hour from me. So we'll see. And then maybe try to go to 1 home game next year, too. So we'll see. But, Jake, thank you for the super chat, sir. Justin Klaus says, hey, Lou, good morning, Annette. I feel that Florida is a program trending upwards and that by 2021 we could be ready to compete. We should have a more talented roster. What do you think? Well, you're gonna have to step the recruiting game up for sure. The thing is with recruiting, when you have a class that's 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever in America, that's good. The problem is that's going to put you about 5th or 6th in the SEC. So it's very hard in the SEC in terms of recruiting because there are so many SEC teams that are recruiting in the top 10. I say it as sort of a trolling tactic here about Dan Mullen, but to a certain degree it is true. At some point, you do have to win something. It becomes harder and harder as the years go by. It becomes harder and harder to convince people that you're a great coach if you can't win anything. And that starts with the division. And Dan Mullen's been a coach in the SEC for a long time. and that's something he hasn't done yet. He's close, right? He's the second best team in the East for the second year in a row. Well, I guess he was the third best team in the East last year behind Kentucky, but so he's close, but it doesn't look like Georgia's about to fall off of a cliff either. I mean, Georgia has how many top 3 recruiting classes in a row now? 3, 4, 5. So it's gonna be tough. It's sort of the Jim Harbaugh argument, you know. Jim Harbaugh wins 9-10 games a year. So does Dan Mullen. Neither one of them can beat their rival, and neither one of them has ever won a division. Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford, never won a division. Now he's at Michigan, can't win the division. Dan Mullen was at Mississippi State, never won the division. Now he's at Florida, can't win the division. So at some point, you have to do that. And that's not me. And I do troll a lot with the Dan Mullen, can't win nothing, blah, blah. I'm not trolling right now. At some point, you do. At some point, you do. If Georgia stumbles, Florida right now would be the next team in line. Obviously, you know, when the SEC predictions come out next summer at media days, it's going to be Georgia 1, Florida 2. So if Georgia stumbles, and listen, Georgia's only the second team to win the division 3 years in a row. Florida did it in the 90s. Now Georgia just did it now. I don't think anyone's ever won the division 4 years in a row. I would have to go back and look, and if there's a Florida fan, it would be Florida if anybody did, but somebody can go back and tell me. Has anyone ever won the East 4 years? I don't think anyone has ever won the East 4 years in a row. So the odds are just against it. Eventually, I mean, look how good Alabama has been over the last 10 years. They've won their division once in the last 3 years. So, you know, maybe Florida gets it done next year and wins the East. You know, I don't know. It's got to happen at some point, I would assume. And there is no third team right now. Tennessee wants to be that team to get there, but I think Tennessee is still a couple of years away. So if Georgia stumbles next year, Florida obviously is the team that's in line there to pick up the pieces. But we'll see. Georgia's got a tough regular season schedule next year. I don't know who does Florida play in the West next year on their rotation. I see a couple of Florida fans in the comments section. I know they play LSU every year. Who's the other SEC West team that Florida's playing next year? Because we play Auburn in Athens, but we play Alabama at Alabama next year. Ole Miss. Well, okay, so that's most likely a win. I mean, like right now, if you had to put money right now on next year's Florida-Ole Miss game, knowing Ole Miss is going to have a new coaching staff and all that, even though you might like John Rice Plumlee, right now you'd put your money on Florida in that game, right? And I think right now you would put your money on Georgia against Auburn. I think Georgia at Alabama is tough for Georgia, and I think Florida LSU obviously is tough for Florida. Isn't that game in Florida next year, though? So maybe, you know, listen, if Florida can go 2-0 against the West next year, which if they beat LSU, they probably will, it's going to come down to the Georgia-Florida game again, probably. We play Tennessee at home, Auburn at home, South Carolina on the road, Missouri on the road, new coaching staff at Missouri, too. So even if Tennessee's a little bit better next year, if you had to place your money right now, I think you'd put it on Georgia over Tennessee. I think you would right now, if you look at next year's regular season schedule for Georgia, and you had to bet on every game right now, I think you would put your money on Georgia for every single game except Alabama and maybe Florida. You put in a toss-up category right now or something, but so it looks like Georgia. What's the worst case scenario right now when you look at Georgia's schedule for next year? 10-2 maybe if they lose to Florida and Alabama. So then you look at Florida's schedule and you say, okay, what can they do? If they beat Georgia, they could go 11-1, 12-0 or something. So it'll be interesting to see. And of course, we got to see who leaves, who comes back. You got the Jake Fromm issue. What's he going to do? I don't don't know where. I personally don't think there's anywhere for Jake Fromm to go. So I think he comes back. But we'll see, right? We'll see. What does Georgia do with the offensive coordinator? anyway, so a lot of questions, but I could do a whole nother hour just on that. But what would be the point? There wouldn't be one. Let's worry about Florida wants to talk about next year already, and I don't blame them because, well, their season ended when they lost to Georgia a month ago. Georgia, on the other hand, our season is just getting started. Just like I told you last year, Georgia's season doesn't start till December. So, but no surprise to me that Florida fan wants to talk about next year. But you probably have to find a Tennessee fan. You guys can sit around until you're blue in the face and talk about how great y'all are going to be next year. Georgia is still playing meaningful football games this year. Ryan Parker, thank you for the super chat. Long live Liu Tube. Have a good day, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, yeah. So that was a little bit of trolling about the next year thing, but anyway, appreciate you guys tuning in this morning. Man, 300 and something people watching the morning show. Amazing. Listen, sponsor. Hey, who wants to sponsor the morning show? The morning show needs a sponsor. We've been doing this a month at a time, and we had the Color Rush podcast, which still you guys should check them out if you haven't. They sponsored the shows in November. We're into December now, so technically they're not sponsoring these shows anymore, but it's a great podcast, and it's still football season. I left the links to their podcast in the description of this video, even though their sponsorship thing ended in November, because it's just a good podcast, and they deserve more listens than what they're getting. So you got some free time this week. Check the links in the description of this video, Podbean, Google, whatever. Wherever you get your podcast, you can find it. The links right to it are in the description here. But you guys want to sponsor the morning show, I don't care who you are, what you do. You want to sponsor the morning show, hit me up, crazyunclelou@gmail.com. All right, I'm going to work on today's top 10 video, try to have that up for you guys by lunchtime or so. Appreciate y'all watching, and have a great day.